All right. So tell me about what you guys are doing with Stedde. You and I met each other. You were at Macquarie. I was building tech startups in sports. We started talking about what are some roll-up opportunities. So we've
Yes,
known each other for 5, 6 years now,
that's
maybe
right.
7.
Yeah.
Uh, we work closely on a couple of things, but we always kind of do our own thing and then come together where it's interesting.
Totally.
So tell me about Stedde.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny. It starts at Macquarie. I mean, at that point, I was part of a larger group, the Tech Media Entertainment Telecom Group, and the TMET, was kind of a catch-all for music and sports and entertainment, and that provided me and a few other guys on the team the opportunity to kind of look at sports and the sport tech as this kind of burgeoning area within larger investment banking, within media and entertainment. And that's kind of where we got the mandate to kind of look at a lot of interesting up-and-coming companies. And I think at the time you were with Really, and I forget even how, sign of a great relationship. You didn't remember how it's really started.
Right.
So we started looking at you guys, and you and I built a relationship. And then, for better or worse, it happened. The pandemic happened. And, our whole group eventually got kind of phased out. So too did, that path for us.
Oh, yeah.
So I hopped over to a place called Park Lane. And I did so because of the sports connectivity. I wanted to be a sports investment banker. At the time when I moved over there, though, there wasn't, a lot of that happening in the market and otherwise. But we looked at, how do we raise money for companies that are compelling in and around the sports plus ecosystem is what we called it. So we maintained our connectivity there. We continued to bounce ideas off one another. That ran its course after, about 2 years, and I founded Stedde over 2 years ago. So with that, it provides, a lot more freedom and flexibility, obviously, to kind of take on the people we want to work with and the companies that they're building in the areas that we think are most compelling. Like anything, when it's your own thing, you can run where the puck is or skate where the puck is and skate where the puck's going, untethered from, P&L numbers you have to hit or whatever.
Right.
I mean, you got to hit that still. But
Right.
so at Stedde, for the most part, 4 of the 5 of us are former athletes. I'm a lowly, former college lacrosse player. We have former NFL, former Alabama football player, and a former NBA player. And it started kind of piece by piece with the co-founder and I building around our networks. What are we doing in sports? What are we doing with the people who we've played with or worked with or what have you, or advised? And so Stedde at its core was always about how do we create value in and through the sports industry.
Right.
And so that's still basically, a pillar of what we are and who we are and what we do. But what's interesting is that sports has kind of been elevated to this place in the market where tech is a derivative of it, and media is a derivative of it, and fashion, and all sorts of things. And so the fact that we've kind of never let go of our sports roots has enabled us to kind of see a lot more stuff that, while it's maybe previously separate from sports, is now not so far away. It's like one
Right.
or two lily pads away from it. So Stedde, what I can tell you about how we're built today is we like to call ourselves a 360-degree partnership as a service accelerator for the sports industry. So, if you are trying to realize some sort of corporate goal through the sports industry, we can be your team. And we do that in the 360 model, wherein if you need doors open to sell your tech or your services into sports-related properties, we can do that for you. If you would like to enhance your marketing or your brand cachet through athletes and the right podcasts and events and all that, we can do that as well. And also, we have an ability to capital formation. So we can, find you sources of capital, investors and otherwise. And in that way, if we do it through a special purpose vehicle, that's how we kind of earn equity into these businesses. So if you accelerate that and zoom out a bit, we kind of earn these bits of equity in these companies that we think are going to be disruptors within the sports space, while helping shape a direction of their sales and their marketing, which is a big part of it, and clipping a retainer along the way. So we've de-risked this way to earn equity in these businesses that we can then help become disruptors.
Right.
That's kind of the best way I describe it.
Yeah, no, and I think the interesting thing that we're starting to see is that, and going back to what you said about sports and sports being the linchpin of everything, and I think it's because it's the only live content that people are rallying around. Like,
Definitely.
people don't rally around Hollywood the way they used to because there's so much content that's going out.
Yeah.
But there's still, like, everybody watches the games together. Like, fans come together. And so it's like that one area where there's this communal knowledge, right? Like, everybody has the same context.
Yes.
Right? It may like different teams and fans, but it's like, we love soccer, or we love, European football, or we love baseball. But now you have all these emergent, like pickleball came out of nowhere, and overtime sports came out of nowhere.
Right.
And you've got we were watching a panel earlier today where it was the Cowboy Channel and rodeo,
Right,
the descendant, right? Like, and they talked about ascendant, which I think is a great word because there's a lot of these different smaller leagues that are taking different looks at sports and how do we kind of do kind of new things. And you're in that space too, yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's interesting because I think that's exactly right. There's a lot, I don't know, it's almost which came first, the access to all these things, or now sports is such a big thing that we need more access to get to them. And it doesn't really matter. It's kind of all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the companies, or rather leagues, that we looked at is Unrivaled. So it's the women's 3-on-3 basketball league. They just wrapped up their season, actually. There's a lot to talk about there, but I think, what we found interesting on many levels was not only that it's one of the highest paying leagues, if not the highest paying leagues for female athletes in the world. We think that because it's an upstart league, drafting off the success of, awareness around Caitlin Clark and the NCAA, but also, the W itself,
Right.
it also had the freedom to be kind of unshackled from kind of legacy media stuff, although they ended up partnering with legacy media.
Sure.
They had an ability to integrate tech into what they were doing and how they were telling that story in a way that previously couldn't be done. Or not that it couldn't be done, but it's just slower moving when you have these kind of
Right.
legacy systems and legacy partners and all of that. So we really liked it because, for all the reasons that put the female athletes first and, celebrated the female game, what we like about it is that there's so many vectors for where it can go, right? And so what can you do with all the content they did behind the scenes, like in game, they're on the sidelines, there's just so much there. And I think it's kind of emblematic of where sports is because all the big leagues are trying to do that too.
Right.
How do we kind of bring it to a micro level and make it specific to you and cooler stuff behind the scenes and whatnot? And it's not that static camera anymore that's just watching the play and then a commercial and that's it. So we're excited by that. We really love the team there. And because of that, a lot of other new leagues and their owners have come to us and said like, hey, what do you think about this? And, we've seen it all. I mean, track one-on-one leagues and, women's gymnastics professional leagues. Like there's this really exciting time to be starting up.
The interesting thing is there's parallels to just the general world, right? Like when and I'm a technologist, I've been in tech for 30 plus years, right? Very old. When you look at emerging countries or third world countries that are emerging into kind of the first world areas, like they're putting in new technologies. They're not burdened by infrastructure that's been there since the 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s.
Right.
They can go full new, right? So they're immediately jumping into Starlink and they're immediately jumping into broadband, right? Because they don't have the constraints of making things work with the existing infrastructure.
Exactly.
And the same thing happens with sports to where if I'm the NFL, I've got massive operations that have an amazing amount of infrastructure to get done what happens.
Absolutely.
They cannot move as fast as some of these upstart leagues.
Right.
And so even when they try, and they do succeed in certain areas, but it's always additive. It's not replacing what they already have.
That's well said.
So when you have Unrivaled or some of these other leagues that are springing up, they get to start miles ahead of where everybody else is because they don't have to go through all of that.
That's absolutely right. A lot of these leagues are also made up of international players. And so how do we tell their stories and connect with their home countries? We can't do that in the old school model. Like we need new technologies and we need cheaper ways to do it. And there's value in it. And it's now not only just cost effective, it's revenue generative.
For sure. And I think that's how you build fandom. And I think that's something that, the established leagues are seeing shifts, right? Like collegiate is great because you've got all of this reorg that's happening and teams are moving around, right?
Yeah.
And they're also trying to attract international audiences because everybody's global, right? At this point, everybody's global. And so they have athletes that are coming to their schools. They need to market those things. They need to grow distribution in those countries because, if I'm, Notre Dame's a great example, right? Like they need to grow internationally. They obviously start with Ireland, but then grow elsewhere, SEC, like you've got all of these opportunities to where their audience needs to grow in these foreign markets because they're selling the rights to those foreign markets to ESPN and to Disney, right? So how do you grow your fan base in those communities? Well, you tell stories that are relevant to the audience in that market.
Yes.
Right? And that's what I love about Alluvio and what they're doing, and then Optikka and what we're doing, is that it enables you to do localized storytelling at scale.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a player that's from Chile and his mom and grandma and family and everybody is still back in Chile, you want to make sure that you get that content out to that audience and you feature their plays and you tell stories about that player so that it resonates with them, right? And then you grow that pod, and then suddenly when it's rights deals time, like you can say, well, I've got 140,000 people that watch us in Chile every week, right?
Right.
And so I think people have to be better storytellers. And everything that we're seeing in technology is to say all of the infrastructure that had to be assembled in order to do a global broadcast 20 years ago is not necessary anymore.
Right.
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 And while the incumbents, the entrenched, are way far ahead of everybody in terms of distribution, the upstarts have the opportunity to carve out market. And they don't even have to be competitive or try to take market share. They're additive.
Absolutely. No, that's actually a great point. I think they can go to places where they are not bumping up on the media rights and the dollars there and the footprint or whatever. I think what they're doing also that's quite interesting is their storytelling. They're creating more opportunities for revenue and eyeballs and whatnot. But I think they're closing the gap between a fan and his or her favorite team or athlete. It used to be so far away that you would catch a glimpse of them on TV and maybe an interview after. And now, like, you're knowing what they're eating before the game in the locker room, and they produce content on their own after, and they have a clothing line, and they have a social media presence. And that gap, candidly, for better or worse, is closing, and technology is the one that's kind of accelerating that. And so in there's just myriad opportunities for brands and, marketing opportunities and upselling for all sorts of things. But that's probably the thing that is craziest to me in the college space too, where, that's a separate conversation on the commercialization of the student athlete. What does it mean to be a student athlete anymore? The collectives, we'll touch on that maybe. But thinking about how you're creating all sorts of these kind of monetizable connection points where now I feel so much more connected to the player. So whether or not I'm learning about what they ate before the game as a pro player, or if I'm an alumnus of a school, I can actually put $1 through a mechanism that I think is going to go bring me the next star quarterback, and then he's going to beat my rival team, and I'll have bragging rights, and I'll get a T-shirt out of it. And all of a sudden, it's like I helped be a part of the thing. Versus maybe I'll donate to the school, and $1 will trickle to the right. So that gap getting closed, like that has happened so fast, and over the course of my career, and being a student athlete myself, it's a whirlwind kind of.
And it's going to continue to evolve, right? And that's I love, you brought it up earlier about not being beholden to like the P&L, like just go and build.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I love to build. And it's such a great time to be there right now because there is all this emergent technology, right?
Yeah.
There's all this infrastructure that is being opened up and can be pipelined, right? Like Alluvio is a great thing. And everybody knows that I love that platform. And I think that it's world class.
We do too.
But that technology is enabling, right? And the thing about Alluvio that's interesting is that it changes the landscape in terms of like all of the AI and processing, whether it's clipping or colorization or language tracks or any of that stuff, used to have to come in and then you'd go and it'd be a separate process, right? Now it's being processed in parts as it comes in and being going to VOD without it moving, right? So it can accelerate all of the adoption of these different models and these different technologies over the top of it because you could do it in line, right? As it's coming in, you process. Because every other industry besides video does that, right? Even Wall Street, as transactions are going, like it's being looked at for fraud patterns and trend lines and all of that. Video has always been file-based, and that slows everything down. But now you've got these kids that have their phone, right? And they're taking shots and it's running in, right? And all of that can be processed as it's going and get it out to the fan.
It's so well said. I mean, on Alluvio too, I feel like when it's kind of like an operating system and then you can do things on top of that, that's really what you need. Because otherwise, you then get in the game again that you're kind of in the 1.0 model of, I got to pay all these different vendors, do all these different things, and then I got to assign someone to oversee it all. If I have confidence in the underlying operating system, for lack of a better term, and then I know that I can easily plug in social or AI clipping or whatever it may be. I think that's going to then, free up them to think about more strategic thinking. Like, now I have all that going. What do I really want to do, right? What am I going to do with all that? So, Michelle talked about some of that, but now, seeing the evolution of that business to, okay, now we're talking about personalization on your phone. That is the world that we're in. I mean, look around anywhere where everyone under 28 years old, their phone is there.
Right.
And if I didn't capture the moment, it didn't happen.
That's right.
And then it's like, what do we do with all this stuff? Well, now there's tools to make it easy, quick, and cost effective. And everyone truly is a brand, a company, a content creator.
Yeah.
And so it's just been fascinating to see, because a lot of the times it was just selfies, like, all right, where are these living?
Right.
What am I doing with this?
That's right.
And now I think like the connective tissue is really robust. And it's quite an interesting time to be.
It's an amazing time. And there's businesses that have been around for a while. Like Greenfly's been around for a while in terms of how do I get content out to my team and player. And SportPlay is a kind of an up and comer in that space. They've been doing a lot of great stuff. And so I think it's getting better, right? To where how do I get like commercially prepared content out to the fans? That's happening, right? But now the next part of it is like, how do I stylize that stuff? How do I turn this really cool shot that I've got of this player into something just incredible that's going to go on a poster or just a social post that makes me look cool?
Right.
There's a friend of mine named Brian Yale, who I love Brian Yale because he keeps things so simple but elegant. And he's like, there's 3 reasons why people have a transaction. You either make me money, you save me money, or you make me look cool. And I think we're definitely in the era of make me look cool.
Totally.
Right. And so for us with Optikka, the thing that I love is that we can take content that's coming in on the fly and build pipeline processes, just like your video pipelines processes, to where, we have specific treatments that are on brand, that are controlled for your brand guidelines, for whatever controls you have, right? Like we can do this, we can't do that, whether it's aesthetics, whether it's language, like all of that can be controlled as agents, right?
Yeah.
Like we have intelligent agents that are built into these systems so that shot comes in, it gets treated, we drop the background, we rig the face, we find the nose so that it lands in the right spot on the graphic, and then we paint and we can decorate it depending on, and it's all programmatic.
Yeah.
Right? People, we call it agentic and LLMs, and some of those things we can hit LLMs or generative engines to be able to paint some cool stuff, but a lot of it's just programmatic, right? A lot of it's just like, what are these things? Now, there are tools that LLMs can do what we call degenerative utilities, which is like dropping pixels out of a frame, right? Remove the background, find a face, right? Those are machine learning and computer vision. That's not LLM. It's not, it used to be AI, but now we keep moving what AI is.
Totally.
But the beauty of it is that all of these things can be pipelined, which means you can do this at scale and consistently, and you focus your creative talent on storytellers.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, so the advent of Illuvio as infrastructure, Optikka as creative at scale, it really is a great time for upstart leagues to be able to do some really cool stuff really fast.
I think that's exactly right. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about being untethered from, legacy things, where in this case, it's costs, it's man hours, it's hiring. I want to see this in 10 different ways. I remember when I was at IMG, a lot of what we had 1 or 2 creatives within in-house, and we had to do, all sorts of creative assets, posters and banner ads or whatever. And every time you wanted to see even a little change, it was a process, and it was man hours, and, the client racks up this bill. And it's like, I want my creatives to really think about how to make it a better, more impactful, sticky, psychologically amazing experience.
Right.
Not, can the font look a little different, right?
100%.
Right? And I think so everyone talks a lot about how AI and tech is going to kind of, this is going to be canceling all these jobs by the wayside.
Yeah.
1, it'll create new jobs.
It will.
But 2, I think it actually allows the creators to do the things they want to do creatively.
100%.
Right? And so I think we shouldn't be as scared about it and embrace it. And the sooner you do, the more that you become its master, I think, than the other way around.
Right.
It should be freeing. It can be.
It should be. Your creatives, and for anybody that's hearing this, like a really good creative is worth their weight of gold. It
100%.
really is. If somebody that can tell a story visually, so good.
Right.
But if you have them now doing every different variation for every platform, and they're moving this around a little bit, and they're resizing this a little bit, they're spending hours tweaking that stuff.
And their creative cup gets drained on that type of stuff, and you want it to be thinking about
stories.
Out of the totally right.
Like, how do I tell better stories? Like, how do I push the envelope? What is the new style for 2028? Right?
Yeah.
You've got the Olympics, and if you have the ESPNs and the NBCs and the Warner Brothers and all these things that have this calendar of content that continually comes. like those designers are on a cadence, right?
Gosh,
Like, okay, we're done with soccer. Now we got to go to football. Then we got to go to baseball. Then we got to go to hockey. And we got to go. And they're just like boom, 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 boom. So for us, what we try to do is like, how can we take the pain away? Like, how can we take the stuff that really drains them and build it into a process to where I've got a really cool design that I like, but how's it going to look across all 1,500 players? How's it going to look across all 32 teams, right?
Right.
We can do that. Like, you do your design, throw it over the fence, we'll blast it out. You can see it and make small adjustments as you want. And you're not having your people just do repetitive kind of Xerox stamping exercise.
100%. And it's not just for the established companies either. I mean, we see new brands all the time where it's like, I'd like to see my logo look like this. I'd like to see this athlete doing this thing. And I think that legwork on the upfront, if you can find a cost-effective, quick way to do it through technology,
right,
you can arrive better at what your vision might be for the brand or the logo or whatever it is. So I think it's for everyone, which is really cool too. It's not, you don't need a big budget anymore.
You don't need a big budget. And it also allows you to do a lot more because you have 2 or 3 people, maybe one, or maybe it's just a contractor, right? And so you're like, well, I can't do all that stuff. You can't, right? Like, just find people that can help you and know what they're doing.
Do you think that, the same way that, I remember we took keyboarding way back in elementary school and is it going to be such that, then it's going to be coding that is taught in high schools, and the way that everyone in the creative world is pretty facile with Photoshop and all that, is it going to be such that the technology that we are kind of blown away by trying to catch up to today will kind of be just rote and almost, part of literacy in the years ahead?
That's a bigger discussion. I think that there's definitely the co-pilot, kind of your AI engine that's riding shotgun with you through life.
Right.
But I think we see that way now because we've been through the education process and we've learned kind of the baseline of culture.
Yeah.
I have some concerns around kids growing up with that as their
first order.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think all of us as a civilization need to kind of figure out what that balance is.
100%.
But I do think that they're not going to replace humans, and they shouldn't replace humans.
Right.
They should be like the calculator that we came out. Like, instead of doing math in our head, we got the calculator. Right.
Well, I wonder if it's kind of like long division. Like they maybe they do teach. I don't know, but you learn that, and then you pop it into the calculator, and you're like, oh, this is a tool to make my knowledge base, which I need to have a fundamental understanding of, faster, better, quicker, cheaper, whatever. I hope it's still like that, because without getting all apocalyptic, if you lose electricity, oh my God, like, what do I do on my phone? The internet goes out, what do I do? It's like, well, we actually had a whole civilization before these things came along.
That's right.
And by the way, creative departments and sports teams and media, we all did these things when we had now rudimentary tech. I don't know. It's like an interesting thing to kind of think about how we integrate and then where this becomes. And you're right. If you think about this modern sports fan today, which I imagine is getting younger, which is when their phones are probably getting in people's hands younger, which for sure we could talk about that. When it's native and you grow up and 3-year-olds understand how to swipe on an iPad.
Right.
If that becomes their first order kind of base layer, thinking of how they interact with the world, I don't know, what does that mean? Like, I don't quite know. I guess I'm not really posing a question or an answer here, but it's just quite interesting that, we are each of an age where we saw the kind of before, right? Dial-up modems and drawing from hand and all these things. And now it's like just seeing that acceleration. I wonder what it's like to be on this part of the curve, right? When you didn't see this other thing. Yeah. For example, like if you say, oh, I pick up the phone, you would go like this. Well, if you're born after a certain age, they go like this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So kids of a certain, I have a young niece, like you would say, this is a phone. Yeah, exactly. They're like, what is that? What is a phone? Is this, right? A phone is internet and whatnot. So anyway, it's just an interesting time, because back to our conversation on sports. Yeah. Sports is for everyone, right? It's for the 95-year-old who was at one of the first Super Bowls, right? And then it's also for the kid who doesn't even really like a team. He follows a player, right? And so it's like technology and media and all that, it can connect those two different people, which is so cool, but also a challenge. How do you, as a brand or a sports team or whatever it is you're trying to do through sports, have meaningful connections to both of them? And sports, I think, unlike most things out there, will still be able to do that. Shared cities, shared history, whatever it is. But at the same time, what enables that connectivity can also enable hyper-personalization. That's right. That's what I think is pretty cool. It's like you can bind people together. They can be cheering on the same team. And then at the end of the day, someone is writing down a box score by hand and the kid is looking at his fantasy team online.
That's
right. And it's like, but yet we're still cheering for whomever it is, the Knicks
sure.
or the Giants, whatever it be.
Yeah, it's a great time because like shared context, right? So everybody, the game is the shared context, but how they engage with the game is different.
Right. That's
based on their, where they come from.
Yeah.
And you do have to meet them where they're at. And so that's the challenge more than anything is having really smart people around that are thinking about the narrative, thinking about the story, thinking about the engagement, like the emotional connection between these, right?
Right.
Because if you make the emotional connection, money will follow, revenues will follow,
100%.
fandom will follow, right? All the things that you need to drive your business are going to follow.
Right.
But you have to make that connection. You have to build that loyalty. And it's a visual medium. That's why we think Optikka is like super interesting in this space because you're communicating visually with these people.
Right.
Technology enables you to do the personalization stuff. But you're right. Like, I think that you're not necessarily going to have creators or creatives or any of that. You need the creative storytellers, the creative problem solvers.
Yeah.
The creativity and like, how am I going to make this experience really, really cool?
Right.
For the 4-year-old and the 95-year-old, right? And I love that video, that meme that's going around Twitter to where the little, 2 or 3-year-old boy is sitting next to his dad and they're watching a game and a goal scores or whatever. And the little boy is like, yeah, it's going. And the dad is like, because he hates it. And then the boy looks back and he's like, I love that as a microcosm for this whole world is like 100%. Connected to different things. People have different reactions. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it really is. And, the storytelling piece, I think I saw something that I want to say Supreme Court or some court struck down that a copyright can't be attributed to an AI, I guess, in terms of like writing a piece of poetry, I think it was. It raises all these interesting questions because like, I think you, at least today, probably want to keep technology to facilitate what you're doing. Like you want to be the genesis and the owner of the idea. You can get inspired by all this and then you can execute it through that.
That's right.
But I think you do want the storytellers because we're still connecting human to human for now.
For sure.
But I think that's really important. And so I think that's where I think the real magic is. It's like, oh, this feels human because I think a human probably made this ad and knows what it's like to connect with your athlete as he comes off the court, you give him a high five. All these things that maybe AI can understand, but really what they're doing is they're making that idea just resonate more, right? They are themselves, at least yet, not having that connection. So I think that's what it comes down to, I think, for what is really exciting about tech is that it's amplifying the human experience.
It is. It's a tool. It's not and there was a, this is wild for me to be quoting it, but Ben Affleck was on a CNBC panel or something. And they were talking about the future of Hollywood and everything with the age of AI and all that stuff. And what he boiled down to, I'm summarizing, is basically AIs don't know when to stop, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like the craft is understanding when enough is enough and when something is done. Right. It's having talent.
Yeah.
And a machine is just going to do what it thinks is expected to do and not know when enough is enough.
Oh my gosh. A little eerie, but that's exactly right.
Yeah. So I think you use it as a tool. It's not talent. You need talent to drive it. You need a purpose for it. Like it's like a brick. Like if you don't pick it up and put it in a house, it's not useful by itself, right? Like it's what you do with it.
Well,
so I think our technology and for the Unrivaled and some of these smaller leagues, you have a smorgasbord of opportunity in front of you to leverage tools and get somewhere really fast.
Yeah.
Right? Like go for it.
Right.
Go for it.
And I think it's within that, finding the things that actually still do resonate. And I think the tech allows you to, before you kind of do your launch, just testing it, how does it run against people's reactions and whatnot? And you can try all the permutations. And then you can say, you know what? Out of all the things that we've created through the technology, this is the greatest way to generate authenticity and connection, right? Yeah, I think that's still what people want. You can tell, I get fed sometimes online these things where it's like, oh, that's obviously someone's AI voice that he didn't say that. Like, I know he didn't say that. And you can kind of still tell the difference. And I think that's a little kind of off-putting. So when people feel like it's not AI, that's the magic, I think, of that piece where it's like, I don't feel like technology was talking to me. I feel like a human told me the story.
Right.
So, we're going to learn through that process right now, but it's quite a time. It's fast moving.
So,
yeah.
Well, thanks for the time, Will.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great.